Um, well, thank you, Thomas. First, let's welcome the people on stage. It's so good to see you. Sony Jørgensen is a screenwriter. She's working out of Stockholm. She's the head writer on the co-op game It Takes Two, and we'll get back to what co-op game means for those outside the gaming industry. Jim Ashilimi is a screenwriter based in Estonia, and he's also the voiceover director on the amazing game Disco Elysium, and we'll get back to that as well. My name is Camilla Lyngbo Ratinge. I'm the founder of a Danish game company called Fight Like a Girl Games. I am also the teacher at the Daddio Games Education, which is located here at the Danish Film School. So, about our topic today, I believe we all know and accept by now that gaming is not the future, it is the now. When we look at recent reports on time spent on different media platforms, it is the most preferred entertainment medium by far by the younger generation. I don't want to diss films in a film school, but my own kids, they just do not watch movies outside school. They play games. For screenwriters and for other kinds of audiovisual creators, and I hope we have some of you here in the audience today, I believe it's very valuable to understand more about the creative process of game production, if not out of a personal passion for games, then because it's such a huge creative industry. In terms of profit, the gaming industry has for some years now actually surpassed that of music and film put together. So if you want a job in the future, you better listen to me. Also, I will personally testify to the fact that it is very, very much fun to create games. It's a truly collaborative process in which the creative talent, traditional writers, work very, very closely with the technical talent. And this collaboration, I think it defines the way that scripts for games are written. And this is one of those hand-on topics we'll hope to share more about with you today. First, a little question to the audience on behalf of Sony and Jim. Anyone who's not in the games industry already, will you just quickly raise your hand so we just get this feeling? It's a 50-50, I think, audience as we anticipated. So it's a very good mix. Cool. Okay, so first let me introduce you, Sony Jørgensen. Sorry, I keep saying it in Danish, Swedish, English. Yeah. You're the lead writer of the co-op game It Takes Two, and it's a game that's out on multiple platforms. It has sold more than 20 million copies. Because the game must be played by 2 players, this means that it has reached a minimum of 40 million players. We know that, right? It is directed by Josef Fares, who is also the founder of Hazelight Studios in Stockholm. It was published in 2021. Yeah, by Electronic Arts, who's one of the AAA giants. Will you please introduce yourself as a screenwriter? Because I know you also write for for TV and for film, and also maybe let us know something about how you experience the transition from more linear screenwriting to writing such a fast-paced action title as It Takes Two.
Oh, okay. So, well, the transition was quite a shock, but I think it was the first day, and then I just, ran with it. I'm first and foremost a screenwriter for film and TV. It was more like almost like an accident that I ended up writing for this game. And I also want to say, whatever I'm sharing today, it's based only on my personal experience working on this game at Hazelight Studios in Stockholm, and specifically working for the game director Josef Fares, because it's a really small studio actually, though it was made for Electronic Arts, but it was under their independent arm. So it's quite a unique experience. And if you work for a bigger studio, it all looks very different depending on what studio you're working for.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work outside this game? Because we'll talk a lot about the game.
Yeah, I have to remember. I think. Yeah, I've been working before Swedish television, some TV series and TV movie, and what else? Yeah, I had a feature made in Sweden that became something completely different than the script. So please don't watch it. And currently, I am working on an original screenplay, which I received development funding for from the Swedish Film Institute.
You represent the like the film and in the TV industry, and you have a traditional. Sorry, you have an educational background as a scriptwriter.
Right? I mean, that's what I hope. That's why I'm here, because I hope to be able to help maybe or inspire writers to come from the traditional film and TV industry, because I receive a lot of questions. I mean, how did you bridge, or how could you transfer? To that. And my main training comes from University of Southern California in Los Angeles, the graduate screenwriting program. Yeah.
And starting to work with Josef Fares on a game, what was your like? Did you say, "Oh, yeah, let me make a game"? I know you're not a gamer, and I think that's kind of also important to
ironic
story, right?
No, I actually told him no. 3 times he had to bribe me. 3 lunches, actually. But it was more because I had never even played a game, so it's full disclosure here. So that's why I told him, "Oh no, what? How do you write for games? I don't get it." But finally, when he told me the 3rd bribe lunch, he got a bit, come on, Sonny. And he said the magic words that, come on, it's, story, no matter what kind of form. And I trust him immensely. So then I dared to, say yes, okay, let's try. And it turned out he was right.
Story is story.
Yeah, and also specifically, we will probably talk about that later, but I want to make clear that he loves linear storytelling, because he's really coming from movie making. And that's why it was also enough with only one writer. So it's not, It Takes Two is not like a huge game that is branching out in 7 different main stories. You need more writers. And that would have been like kind of overwhelming, but because It Takes Two is actually basically a linear story, that's when I also realized, oh, okay, even I could do this, because it's very similar in that sense to a feature, or rather maybe a TV series, because of the amount of minutes.
And I think that's my clue to shift my attention to you, Jim, because you have worked on a giant game with lots of branching. So, Jim Ashlevi, will you introduce yourself as also a screenwriter and also a playwright? And how did you experience the first time you started working on such a widely branching game as Disco Elysium?
Sure. Much like Sony, I did not ever expect to be working in the gaming industry. My background is mainly in theater and in literature. And I'm also a graduate of the Baltic Film and TV School. So theater, film, TV, literature, the sort of legacy forms of art and storytelling were my education. And I really made my debut as a writer, as a playwright, back when I was a 20-year-old young man. So I think I really learned to tell stories from playwriting and from the playwriting tradition. And then as things went on and new projects came along, I also started writing for TV and for some short films and so on. And I've also spent most of my life acting and directing in theater. So I'm very much, even though I have been a gamer ever since I was a small kid, really, some of my first memories in life are of me gaming. I still never, ever expected that my expertise or my talents would be required in this particular art form. So it was a huge surprise when I joined the Disco Elysium project as a director to suddenly realize that, oh, everything I've learned as a director and actor in theater and also on film and TV sets is actually the skill set that I also need to use working on disco. So they were actually in need of people coming from those so-called classical forms of art. I mean, obviously, the game has dozens and dozens and dozens of actors in it, so somebody needed to be the director in the room and capable of working with them. But also the whole makeup of our studio. I mean, before it became a gaming studio, it really was a collection of Estonian art people and left-wing madmen and women, and we were mainly. I mean, we started with a blog. That's what it was in the beginning. It was a blog where people posted poetry and photography and I don't know, made announcements of their fine arts exhibitions and whatnot. And then as years went on and people's ambitions grew, we suddenly pivoted to making games because why not? So in a way, it's strange that I ended up working on a game, but also it's very strange that anyone in Zaum ended up making games because we all came from either the world of painting or photography or poetry or critical and cultural theory or art criticism or whatever, all these kinds of fields of art and culture. And then suddenly we made a game.
Yeah, thank you. And then maybe we should introduce Disco Elysium as a game. We had a short discussion before we came on stage, and Jim was like, maybe we should ask people if they played it. I'm like, no, because it takes 40 hours to play this type of game. So I think we kind of want to establish that we can all talk about games and about narrative games and about without having played every single game. I think there's a lot of name dropping going on in the games industry. People will always be like, oh, I played this game, did you try it? I'm like, no, it's 30 hours, I didn't. So, just relax. We have videos to show you so that you can all get a feeling of what we're talking about. But I will say that it is quite an arty game. For me, when I see it, it reminds me more of an experimental novel or like absurd theater almost, then it reminds me of any sort of mainstream game that I know. It has certainly found a pretty big and very committed international audience. And because the universe is so hard to describe, I think we should see the video now.
Get up, detective. One last time. The great city at the end of the world is waiting. So, get out there, solve a murder with a unique skill system at your disposal. Carve your own path across an award-winning open world. And uncover even more in this groundbreaking role-playing game. Meet and get to know more of the locals.
Welcome to reality, baby.
Sure thing, champ. Lead the way.
If you could only find your gun.
It's okay.
With full voice acting for every single one of the city's beautiful people.
Yes. I'm going to unplug the microphone, okay?
And leave a bigger mark behind you in new quests.
You're big boys, you can handle it.
Well, it seemed impossible at first because the script looked like nothing I had ever seen before. And I don't mean the content. I mean, it's an amazing story, but on a purely technical level, this isn't a normal looking script because, I mean, the game consists of around 1.2 million words, which if I needed to visualize it for you all, it's when you place all of the Harry Potter novels side by side, and in total they're a bit less than 1.2 million words. Or if you take Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, if you put those two together and multiply those two by 2, then that's also around the same amount of words as Disco Elysium. And since it's not a linear story and everything depends on everything else, and the game is highly reactive to the player's choices, there is also no way that this creates a situation where there is no way for me as a director to print out a definitive version of any scene for the actors, because all the scenes had like 12 different versions they play out. So we sort of worked inside of this matrix of storylines, and hopefully I can show you a picture of it later on as well. But
we have that for later. Yeah.
But for now, just try and visualize a wild sort of like, CSI type evidence map where, you have loads of a wall full of cards that individually make no sense. But when you start following the strings, attaching the cards to one another, it slowly starts to make sense. And I was there as a director to always make sure that the actors were aware of what was happening and why, because, at one point they would have to play a scene in a certain way, for instance, that in a way that, I don't know, ends in a beneficial way to their character. Maybe they end up being very satisfied with the results of the scene. And then 5 minutes later, I'm going to start working with the actor on another version of the scene where they are absolutely heartbroken at the end of the scene, And so it's like a very intense shifting of gears all of the time. That was the job, basically, for the actors and for me as well.
Interesting. And about making sense, in the beginning of the game, the main character is very drunk. And there's this dialogue going on between different parts of his own brain.
Yes.
And the dialogue is shown as like text on screen, and it's also voice acting as you're describing it. And the dialogue itself, I don't know how to describe it. It's quirky and it's very weird and it's very long. And it's not something that would fit into a film script for a feature film because of the usually like very tight economy and like of time and of scenes. So my question to you is like, do you think computer games offers more creative freedom than conventional like audiovisual media because of this openness?
I wouldn't say it offers more creative freedom. It's just that it opens up other possibilities for telling stories that I, as a writer, find extremely compelling. Because as you already mentioned, after Disco Elysium, I've been writing Zaum's future projects as a writer.
Which are secret.
Which are secret, and I'm going to be fired if I mention anything about the projects. But basically, as I said, I started out as a playwright, but also, I've written some novels and so on. So it's all linear storytelling. And for me as a writer, it's been such an interesting, galaxy brain opportunity.
Yeah.
Like I can literally feel my brain growing new sections.
I know exactly.
that I can now use for writing, because I think it's actually, even though we are so used to linear stories, because that's sort of the legacy of the culture that we have all grown up with, movies, TV series, novels, plays, they're all linear. We never go to theater to see Shakespeare's Hamlet expecting to see like a different ending or like 15 different endings, let's say. But with games, it's very interesting because it's also working on these branching narrative type games has made me think about how how in theater, for instance, if you go to see improv, that is kind of a form of theater that reacts to the audience and reacts to the situation at hand. So it's like everyone gets excitement from the fact that we never know what's going to happen, but it's pretty certain that what is going to happen is going to be unique. So nobody coming on other dates is going to experience that same kind of performance. And also it's going to be electrifying because it's here and now. It's really like, again, unique in a way that it's tailor-made for this audience and this audience alone. Also stand-up comedy sometimes when comedians do, crowd work, when they start asking the audience members questions and start riffing off of the things that people say. That also creates that same kind of excitement and risk, I suppose, risk-reward type of element. And that is the thing that really excites me about branching narratives in games. That is something that those types of stories offer a very similar kind of excitement, I feel, to readers / players. And I think it's just a super valuable new way of telling stories. It's not a better way of telling stories. I still love linear stories, but it's amazing what you can do. Like the opportunities that it opens up for the writer are just mind-blowingly exciting.
Cool. Thank you. Let's move to you, so return to you, Sony, and talk about the game It Takes Two a little bit more in depth. It's a very gamey game, I'd say. It's a kind of a platformer about solving like physical puzzles fast, and it's about fighting these bosses. It's very inventive bosses, but it's still full of boss fights. It's fast paced, as I said, it's action packed, but then it has this unusual story for a game. It's about a couple going through divorce and also about the child's experience of it. And very, very interesting. The game must be played in co-op. It means every puzzle and every fight takes two people who have to be very good at working together to solve the puzzle. So it cannot be played in single player mode, which is like a sort of like a risky decision to make for a game, because it means like lots of people will buy it and they can't play it because they're home alone or whatever. But it means that the story match the game mechanics in a very interesting way. So I think we would show a clip for those of us who haven't.
This is Joseph Fares, game director at Hazelight, and I'm here to show you gameplay of It Takes Two. The game is a co-op action-adventure platformer with a focus on marrying the story and gameplay. You play as Cody and May, two parents that have decided to divorce. Of course, this upsets their daughter Rose, who creates two dolls that the parents magically turn into. And with the guidance of a cheesy love book called Dr. Hakim,
they have to stay together.
I will help you fix your relationship.
You now control Cody and May on this crazy ride.
Reach them. We're tiny.
The amount of variation is insane. There are no similar scenarios. Every scene is unique. Whatever happens in the story will be reflected in the gameplay. Let me show you some examples. When Cody and May meet a gang of squirrels in their tree, May finds out that Cody let a nest of wasps move in. Now they are forced into a war between the wasps and the squirrels, using the squirrels' weaponry. Combine the sap gun and the match gun to create explosions. Or use them to weigh down objects and open new paths.
I'm getting spooky about that.
When I played this game together with my 12-year-old son, we almost got a divorce because I was so slow and I was so bad at solving the puzzles, the action puzzles, and well, he's not. And he couldn't move on before he had showed me how to do it. So he was like, oh, it was a learning experience in teamwork, which I guess is also the sort of like this indirect point of the whole game, right?
Yeah.
So Sony, would you tell us about how you work together with the director and with the game designers and the technical team?
Together with the departments and close with the art department. But again, that is mainly because of Josef Fares, because that's how he wanted to work, and I think also because he comes from movies and he knows the importance of the storytelling and the scripts. But I wouldn't be able to write one word without this really close collaboration with him, because he was, of course, the bridge to all of the departments. But once I picked that up, he actually often sent me to be the spokesperson after we had had meetings. And then I was sent to talk to especially the art department, because I'm the one who developing the characters and specifically their internal emotional arc, how they kind of change emotionally and internally through this linear story. So that could affect not only the gameplay and the mechanics, but also the world. For example, if they built like a room or whatever, or if they gave one character a prop, and I could then see that, no, this is better to give to the husband, for example, because then we can use that as a way for him to be forced to face maybe his issue and so on. So that's how we could collaborate. So I was sitting in many of those meetings. We inspired each other all the time. Sometimes the ideas that Josef and I had for new characters or new worlds that made them come up with ideas for game mechanics and puzzles and so on, and the other way around when they came up, because they had to produce like new ideas of game mechanics all the time. I mean, that was the big difference of working for film and TV, where we usually have in the best of worlds the script already developed, but we all had to start from scratch the day one. So everything is going on parallel, which was kind of mind blowing for me in the beginning. But it really worked out. But that's where, in this case, in this studio, Josef Fares is the key leader, creative leader, who has this vision and can bring it all together. And we had to, because of the budget and the timeline, we had to start the actual shooting in this mocap studio. The ones who are not into games, that's when you see the actors in those black suits with all those white dots. We had to start that, I think, maybe a year into development. This game is considered pretty small. It took about 3 years to develop from scratch to when we had the finished game. So yeah, that's also a huge difference, because since we had to start shooting, and because of this, it was shot more or less linearly. Yeah, way before the script was developed and finished. That was a huge challenge as well. it didn't bother me because it's about having faith as a writer to know that, whatever happens, I will have a way to, tie it all together.
But to compare it with the film production, it's like you have the cameraman working, you have the light crew, you have the sound people, everybody are already working and you're still writing the script.
Yeah, but I think that's where I brought my experience from writing actually for film and television. Because, you really need to know some of the important key elements. And for me as a writer, the most important thing for me is actually the internal arc. The emotional change, the psychological change that goes on inside the characters. All that is basically more or less in the so-called subtext. And that will help me to create like a really tight and fun and surprising plot. And when you have that's what I'm using as my guiding post in a way, because I kind of knew where I wanted them to end up in the end. I didn't know how, and especially not when they changed, when the different departments had to change, especially the designers, the technical stuff. We had, for example, we can call it like level or chapters. When they, I had written the whole level, and then Joseph came to me and said, "Oh, by the way, we have to throw this out." Okay. And then they said, because they had worked for many weeks trying to develop a fun game mechanic for that level or several, but they were not, happy with it. So they decided we have to throw this out. And then they said, and we have to move this level. So we have to move this level, to the further ahead in the story. So we just switch those two levels, one in the beginning and one in the end. And then, of course, I had to say, "Oh, whoa, no, that won't work," because
They still hate each other.
Yeah, exactly. And it was actually one of the key levels that we will see a little clip of soon, where the mother character May has her moment. It's kind of a climactic moment in her internal arc where she needs to face her greatest fear in this story. And they suddenly wanted to move that to chapter 2 in the beginning. So all those things happened all the time. But I'm the kind of writer, I actually love challenges like that, because you have to think outside the box and you have to think really fast. And you can do that. Well, number one, when you have the craft, that's why it's not enough to attend like a screenwriting training for 2 years, not even like I did. USC, one of the world's best film schools. You need to have this experience and write a lot.
Okay, I just before we move on, I see like two different kinds of writing in It Takes Two. There's one like linear introduction, then you have like cutscenes, and they are also like linear in themselves. But then you also have dialogue between the player characters as you play.
Yeah,
and that kind of
story
writing
continues.
Yeah, it continues, but you don't know exactly what the player will do at what point. How do you write that kind of material?
Yeah, it was split up. But for non-gamers here today, the cutscenes, it's basically, the gamer plays the game, and then in between you have those so-called cutscenes. And then the gamer can relax or go to the bathroom, while this is running. And that's the main story. And those cutscenes, they are literally like movie scenes. And those scenes, I mean, it's like that's the linear story. So for those scenes, I used actually the regular software as we do for film and TV. Final Draft. We will show examples, visual examples of the different formats or software. So that's like writing a TV series is better because it's so much. Okay. But then, as you said, during the actual gaming, the story needs to continue, and the characters are, you know, shooting dialogue to each other all the time, and that's pure dialogue writing. They call it ARCs, dialogue writing, and that I chose to do that in regular like Excel sheets because that's what they often do also in film. They offered me to continue using it in Final Draft, but I didn't see any meaning because then you needed an extra step to give to the dialogue. I mean, voiceover designer who is responsible of recording all that dialogue with the actors. So it was like two different, an additional.
But they still have to stay in character, right?
Oh yeah. And so I had those additional thousands of lines of dialogue to write. And also, I remember now, I was even together with Joseph, he even brought me, we went to London for the casting process as well, because as a writer, I was the one who knew the characters the best. But we were so synced, that's why it worked well. We were very creatively like synced. I got his vision, you know, all the time. So it was very smooth collaboration, I would say.
Thank you, Sony. We have given both of you a little homework exercise. We have asked Jim to choose a series or feature film that would make a good game. And we have asked Sony to talk about how she would approach turning the game It Takes Two into a TV series. I will start with you just to continue the talk about It Takes Two.
It's two big Hollywood writers, co-writers. They made already the adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff like that. Josh Miller and I'm sorry, right now I forgot the names. So Hazelight or Joseph and the producer, they actually, though I'm not working there anymore, but they still wanted me to be a part of that. So Joseph and I, we read each new draft of the adaptation and give them, you know, our notes. But it's not that we have or Hazelight have any creative final say, not at all. It's just that
they find it still basically.
Yeah, it's an adaptation, and I mean it's but they're smart. They know that it's always good to hear from you know the writer and Joseph in this case, absolutely. But we just encourage them to do their own thing. You know, when it comes to adaptation, you really need to. We were surprised that they actually. So far, they've used so much more of the characters and stuff in the game that we had even, you know, we didn't expect that. We thought they were going more free, but we were amazed by that. So we'll see. It's for Amazon Studios currently, and with what's his name, The Rock, the Dwayne Johnson's company, but and other companies as well. So we hope. It will eventually go to Greenlight.
Interesting. Okay. But for the sake of this experiment, we will talk about how you would approach it if you were the one. But I think first, let's see the scene that you picked from It Takes Two, and then we can talk more
we can
after that. If how to use character.
Yeah, because I
plus in the TV
mention
series,
something
right? So,
about
yeah.
Message Org. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
What a mess!
Yeah, we really need to clean up our attic.
Hey! You recognize this suitcase? Huh?
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
Ha! Ta-da! Old school, baby!
Oh.
Woo! Welcome to the concert hall. May, it's time to sing!
Oh, no, I can't sing. I haven't done it for years.
Come on, May. He won't give us the last letter piece unless you sing. You just get up on that stage and you show him what you've got.
That's not a stage. It's my old record player.
You're right, but you two will turn it into a proper stage. We need lights, speakers, microphones.
Look, I'm not going to sing a single note.
Woo! Yes, you will. Yeah!
No! Will you turn that off, you stupid?
So May, the character, as you saw, she gets like singing as an actual game mechanic. So she needs to sing in order to solve certain puzzles and to advance physically through this world, but doing so in collaboration with the husband, Cody. He gets like a symbol. It's almost like, what do you call it, like a shield or anything. Anyway, and they have to collaborate using their own completely different mechanics in order to advance yourself. And so that's a bit of the deeper story. And it came also from the fact that, I mean, this is a buddy story. So you have two characters. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted both characters to have this arc, internal journey, also because it's a game and, the gamer has to pick one of the characters. So I wanted to give that emotional journey to both of the players, no matter which character you pick.
So can I ask you, if you were to make this into a TV series, animated
Yes,
TV series, would you have more than enough material? Is that like the character arc you would actually focus on?
I would go deeper because, but still, I mean, of course, I have enough. I would have enough from the game, but then I would have the opportunity actually to go deeper for a TV series, because in a TV series, you want, because you don't want them to grow that much. I mean, here they actually grow a bit. They have a huge arc within this game, but in a TV series you cannot give the character that insight, or at least too early. If we're talking about a TV series that should continue several seasons, but it's a super important part, I think, as a writer, of the so-called engine that drives the series. So for me as a writer, it's really important in TV series, or also in a feature film, to go even deeper into their flaw. Here it was more this singing, but in a TV series, I would definitely go deeper and say, okay, and ask the why questions. Why? What really happened to kind of kill her voice? And in a TV series, if possible, you should always look really in the early childhood, because that's when that wound can really establish. So that's something I would look forward doing, and just adding, because this for a TV series, it's so obvious, even in your game, that you have this big world, because we shift worlds. Every new chapter is actually a new world, and that's perfect for a TV series. That if you have you're often looking for a unique world, and here in a lot of games you already have unique ones. You don't have to have that, of course, in series, but you have it here. So I would look go much deeper.
Psychological and emotional.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's been common for quite a long time to license popular film IPs for games. The other way around, such as like superhero movies, Disney movies, action movies being turned into games. One example is a big Danish game studio, IO Interactive, who's making a James Bond game right now. So that's one very obvious story to tell. And in recent years, we've seen the reverse movement. We've seen games such as League of Legends becoming an animated series called Arcane on Netflix. We've seen the zombie survival game The Last of Us becoming a very popular TV series on HBO. And now we've given you the homework exercise to pick a work of fiction that would make a good game. But first, Jim, what do you think makes good game material?
Good enough for adaptation?
Yeah.
Is what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think really it just needs to be a compelling story. That's, at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Because as you and I have discussed before, games have a huge spectrum of tools and genres and ways of telling stories, and many forms of game storytelling have very little to do with stories as such. They're more about game mechanics. And so story-based games or games that lean heavily on the narrative are really just like one little slice of the whole pie of games. So I think when it comes
Tetris
to
is a very popular game. What's the story?
well,
there?
it was made into a movie, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen the film, but I think it was about the backstory of the making of
successful.
But yeah, so for this exercise, I was kind of cheating, because once you see the clip, you'll understand immediately that, well, a lot of you have probably already seen games made of this particular story, but I just wanted to pick something that is easily recognizable and a story that we don't need to go to Spark Notes and then read the plot first and then have that discussion. So
let's show the next video.
One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, bind them. Next Christmas, the most extraordinary tale ever told will come to life.
Even the smallest person can change the course of the future.
Lord of the Rings, a fairly well-known story. Just to summarize it in a very simplistic way, we have a hobbit who is given a very powerful ring by a wizard called Gandalf, and Gandalf tells the hobbit, you need to go and destroy the ring, you need to go throw it in the fire. And the hobbit puts his little crew together, and together they go on an adventure, which ends with, spoiler alert, the destruction of the ring, because the ring turns everyone evil, and it's a far safer world without this ring in it. So
So disregarding other games that may have been inspired by the story already.
Yes.
What would your game look like?
Disregarding those games, and for the purposes of this particular conversation, I'm not going to go into the possibilities of turning it into a dating sim or a racing game where you can, I don't know, ride dragons and horses and win awards for being super fast. If this were a branching storyline type of game, it would be very interesting to, first of all, let the player pick who they want to be, because we're so used to seeing the Hobbit, Frodo, as the protagonist and the one good guy, basically, who we are rooting for. And of course, he has help, and there are other good guys there as well. But wouldn't it be interesting to first admit that really the goodness or evilness of someone is really a question of perspective?
Now I kind of understand where you're going with this.
You know, because there are many characters in this world for whom Frodo is an antagonist. He is a force of evil. So why not let the player pick whether they want to be a wizard, an elf, a dwarf, a hobbit, an orc, or I don't know, like an evil spirit, the Nazgul, I think they were called. Maybe. Sorry, Tolkien experts, if I'm messing something up here. But yeah, why not let the player really role play? Because at Zaum, we're also mainly interested in making role playing games, and what it means, the meaning of role playing in a game, that means giving the player, I don't want to say complete freedom, because there's never complete freedom. It's kind of an illusion at the end of the day. But giving them enough freedom for them to feel like they can really carve their own path through this story. So why not tell versions of The Lord of the Rings that really depend on who the player chooses to be and what they choose to do in this grand quest of either procuring the ring or destroying it, and really seeing how it informs the social hierarchies of these different races in this world, how it influences the global politics, the sort of social tensions and everything. I mean, it might sound overly complex, but there are really wonderful examples out there of games that are already accomplishing that in exceptionally engaging and inspiring ways. For instance, one of my favorite games of all time is Fire Emblem Three Houses, where you start as a teacher who needs to pick. So there's this school that is divided into 3 houses, and it's basically like an aristocratic military school. And when you arrive at the beginning of the game, you need to pick your house. You need to basically choose which students are going to be your students, and then you're going to be taken on this grand quest through this really huge story where you spend, again, like 60 hours or 100 hours getting to know those students, learning about the relationships in this house and so on. And then, again, sorry for the spoiler, but there's war breaks out. And what happens is that all those people that you spent 100 hours getting to know, they're now at war, both amongst themselves and with the other houses. And what makes the game so replayable is the fact that in your first playthrough, you only get to really deeply know your students, but then there are 2 other houses full of the same number of students who all have their own backstories and childhoods and, you know, like wonderful backstories that you then get to know on your second playthrough and your third playthrough. And you get to experience a completely different perspective, because the first playthrough, you're only rooting for those people and you want them to survive and them to win and them to thrive. But then when you jump to the other house, you're suddenly learning about the reasons those people are against, the other husband and so on. And it makes the moral choices in the second playthrough even more painful and huge.
Yeah, it's one of those examples where our galaxy brain starts hurting in an interesting way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad you brought this whole thing up with the perspective and the point of view, because that's actually a super interesting part of writing for games. Thank you. We have also asked you, Jim, to choose another example of a game that's interesting as an example of narrative gameplay. So let's just jump right into that and share.
When I moved to Haven Springs, I hadn't seen my brother Gabe in years.
Alex! It's just so good to see you again. Welcome to Haven.
This place is pretty sweet.
I'm glad you two met. Is this dude my best friend?
And this dude hands me the best beers?
Alex, right? I'm Steph. I didn't realize...
That we all knew you were coming?
For the first time in years.
Well, what do you think?
I love it. I really let myself believe.
Welcome home.
I don't know what to believe now, except Gabe is dead.
This one's for you, Gabe.
Hearing everyone talk about my brother, about the life he had here with all of you, I lost the chance to have that.
What happened to Gabe was a senseless, tragic accident.
It wasn't an accident.
Son, now is not the time.
Alex, are you okay?
No, they're definitely hiding something. What happened here?
Haven's a community. We help each other.
Alex, be careful.
There's something you should know about me. I know what other people are feeling. I can see these auras around them.
Watching TV series and films and other forms of narrative media, reading books and so on, it would be pretty easy for those kinds of players to get into a story like that, because it doesn't require you to be, have like supreme hand-eye coordination and be super good at lightning fast reactions and so on. It's really about navigating human relationships and making hard decisions. The game features this iteration of the Life is Strange series of stories. The protagonist is someone who can feel other people's emotions and can also hear their internal monologues, and so she oftentimes needs to decide whether she lets that inform the way she interacts with those people or not. And they are oftentimes, or most of the time, they're really hard decisions, because something that seemingly seems to be like a way of helping someone might end up being something that dooms that person. And also, I guess Life is Strange is a good example of a type of narrative-based game, because I think Life is Strange, even though it's also a kind of branching storyline, would be easier to adapt to something like a TV series than say Disco Elysium, because it's already pretty cinematic, and it has quite a lot of cutscenes, and when I compare this to Disco Elysium, Disco really puts the player in a position where they are really in charge of every line of dialogue that is being spoken. Disco has 0 cutscenes. There's one scene where you see characters riding on a boat in a straight line, and that, I guess, counts as a kind of cutscene in our world. But there are no scripted cutscenes where people are having conversations and doing things. really, it feels more like you're suddenly both a reader and an actor almost. An actor in an improv play where you're always given a series of options for how you want to react to one thing or another. But yeah, really, you need to word by word basically decide what you want to say and how you want to react and how you want to exist as a person in this world. In Life is Strange, it is still a bit more simplified in the sense that you get keywords and you get hints of what the protagonist might say, but you don't get the full text. You take your pick, and then the dialogue carries on in the direction that you picked. In Disco, you go line by line, deciding everything by yourself. So it's more granular in that regard.
Let's let me see. We're jumping to let's just show then you can talk.
Yeah, the first
one
is that was
exactly.
This is just a sample from the internet. Okay, so it's not from a specific
movie.
Oh, this is another one. Oh, I see. Okay. So I sent the actual sample. Okay, so I don't know what this is, but
it's just a generic sample of how traditional movies look.
Okay.
And we could say this is in the film and TV industry. This is one format that everything pretty much looks like, and it's just so different in gaming, which is why we want to show gaming, it can look a billion different ways.
So. And the whole script that I wrote for It Takes Two, I wrote in that format in the software. There's different softwares, but I use Final Draft. So, and then you have all those thousands and thousands of dialogue in an Excel sheet. But that was for It Takes Two. And now
yes, let's just jump on to see the next slide. Then we'll see. This is yours, Jim. Yeah, it's Jim.
What did you call it? Brain?
In the galaxy brain exploding. Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit? We have I think a few more. Just to and then it just soon said, let's get the last one, and then here stop. So will you tell us about this, the hands-on process of working with this kind of tool?
Yes. So I suppose now you know what I mean when I say it's like a matrix, or it's like a wall full of pieces of evidence that are linked together by string. This was my script when I was working with the actors in the studio, and this is also the format in which I write on a day-to-day basis now as one of the writers in the team. And so the best way to describe this type of script is to treat it as not one monolithic thing where one thing happens after another and it's a logical series of events that only unfolds in one way always. It's more like a living organism where various parts of the script either disappear or emerge based on your previous choices in the story, and also based on the type of character that you are. There are versions of this story where even if you make the same kinds of decisions that you made maybe in your previous playthrough, simply because you're a different kind of character who, is either dumber than the previous character that you had, or smarter, or more empathetic, or less empathetic, or more vulnerable to their electrochemistry in their nervous system, more vulnerable to addiction, or vice versa, more resilient or more resistant to that. All of those variables influence the way the story unfolds and influence the types of options you are given as this protagonist.
And this tool is something that you made in-house?
These screenshots are taken from an in-house writing tool, but the one that we used for Disco was basically identical. So it looked the same. it functioned the same way. So yeah, so that's what we've been using since the very beginning. In addition to your choices, luck also plays a role. So if any of you are familiar with board games or D&D, you know that you sometimes need to just roll the dice and let fate decide what happens. And that's what happens here oftentimes as well. When you see the red card there, shoot him again. That is a scene. It's the tribunal scene in Disco Elysium. You can either fail or succeed, and it has nothing, well, almost nothing to do with your previous choices, but basically fate and luck also play a role in the story, in the way the story unfolds at certain points in the game. So that's also another variable that maybe the players even can't control, as opposed to all the stuff that they can control.
So I guess being a script writer in games, it's also about not having control in a way, like
kind of, yeah. Letting fate decide, and also accounting for those, accounting for the way fate can influence the story, and still make sure that the story doesn't completely collapse because fate decided that something completely illogical happens that doesn't fit into the world or the story.
And you also want to...
Yeah, I just wanted to add for those who are not, who haven't developed like a screenplay or for a TV show. When I saw this, I realized, usually I do and a lot of other screenwriters, we start with a bit of a similar thing. We work with small cards and, move them around and chuck it out, and new cards comes on the wall. And because it's really about the intricate puzzle, even if it's a one main linear story. So it's not similar like this, but there's different steps, of course, in the development. So what you saw, the screenplay format, that's the when you have kind of figured out the basics, and then you move on to the script. So you rarely go directly to this script.
There's some of this that's related to doing the storyline or the outline of the movie or a series before you actually write the script, or you have multiple versions of a scene, and in the game you basically just you keep the multiple versions of the scene and connect them with your galaxy brain.
All right. So I kind of want to also tell just a little bit about the game I'm working on, which is called Fight Like a Girl. I'm in production with it right now. It's a multiplayer social platform for young girls. And I have some funding for it, and I hope to have an early access version in the beginning of next year. So it's just a third examples of how different this can be done when you actually work on it. Because what I'm creating is it's a platform for me to make multiple multiplayer minigames, but also for users in the future to make their own multiplayer narrative minigames. This means while I'm writing a game, I'm actually also imagining someone else writing another version of it in the future. So it's a lot about systems. So I think that's kind of interesting as well. So maybe we should get the next.
Come quick. We have to help Mishka. She is super sad. Mishka, what happened? Tell us.
You feel so ugly and ashamed. I will never post a selfie again. I want to hide forever. This hater writes mean stuff about my body. And I do nothing. Say nothing. I want to say not okay. But I'm afraid it gets worse. I don't have the courage.
If you face the hater, I think you will feel better. We will help. We will make Mishka courageous.
Oh my god. Free Cat comforted Mishka in the sweetest way. Huge fighter even more. When Strong Puppy also said love her way, it was comfort heaven for Mishka. Vishka forgot about the hater for a minute. Courage could grow. Loud Pookie tried the polite approach. Dear troll, I'm sure you don't mean it that way, but you are hurting people's feelings. Vishka appreciated the effort, but the troll hardly noticed. Cute fighter did nothing but snore. Lazybones, wake up! Wow! When so many voices said no more at the same time, it had a huge impact. The big bad hater is now a tiny little troll. Together you are strong.
So it's like writing the script where it's like, oh, come quick, we have to help Mishka. She's super sad. And then player A, whoever player A is, which could be any player looking in any different way, could say, oh, Mishka, what happened? Tell us. And then back to Mishka, who's an NPC, a non-playable character, who'll say, oh, I feel so ugly and ashamed. I will never post a selfie again, etc., etc. So this is like actually a linear introduction scene that I put in every minigame in the beginning. But then on this side, it shows like the rest of the story will be presented as a combination of small scenes that can be combined in any possible way. And it's on like sentence level almost like. So this would be like, oh, let's say the player's supposed to pick a move, but one player didn't pick a move. Just were like passive while the other players are doing what they're supposed to do, doing something. Then I would have a scene that would say, if one player does not choose a move, then I'll have the text, player O, and it will be replaced by whatever name the player who didn't do anything has at that time. It says, did nothing but snore, Lazybones, wake up. Oh, then I'll have an option that says, oh, what if 2 of the players didn't do anything? Then I'll have that option. What if 3 of the players didn't do anything, etc. And I'll have every single possibility for any other combination as well. And so it's another way of writing. I'll say that's why I said, oh, I know that feeling of my brain almost like, you know, bursting after working for a day on something like this. And I have 5 more games to write before Christmas. So, and I just want to show what it looks like in its very early prototype version. So and it's actually the beginning is this exact intro scene, and then it turns into the gameplay. And this is the first time I'm showing it anywhere. So that's not even the end of it because it's a live game. So it's never done. I will be like supporting the game and releasing new content forever basically. So it's a very different, it's different way of working with scripts, right? Yeah. So time is up. I still think we were planning to talk a little bit about working in the industry. I think we will have time for one more question about this topic because I think it's something that's interesting to everyone. I see my 2 students raising their hands. How wonderful. Cedric and Oliver. Oh, we need to hear both of your questions. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be quick. So it's a pretty common controversy in making games that when you're coming up with an idea and ideating it, you start with, or you argue, how does story inform mechanics and how do mechanics inform the story? A lot of people like to think that it's kind of this binary about how we create things, and I'm curious about your take or your experience in what that negotiation is like in games that are very story-centered gameplay. How much weight does the story writing inform mechanics, and does the game director or does the game designers come to you and say, hey, we want this thing to be in the game? Yeah. Can you guys write it in somehow?
I mean, in my case, I am the game director and I am the writer and I am the fundraiser and the producer and everything, and, you know, a lot of stuff, which is probably, I don't think I'm the only one like that, but it is like seriously on a daily basis. It's like one step ahead on the story, one step ahead on the gameplay, one step ahead on the story, one step ahead on the gameplay. It's like this. I'll make like maybe a quick idea for a game for like one mini game, and then I might not even write it or finish it. Maybe I just have the name or the characters, and I'll put it on the list, and then I'll be like when we're discussing how we could make the actual system work, and when I have new animations in the library, and when I have new features, then I'll mix it all together, and I'll go back and look at the story, and then I'll write the first version of it, and it may make me change the system actually. Like when I'm writing, I'm like, oh, I forgot to this. It doesn't make sense now in terms of the story, so I need to change the camera system. Or it's just back and forth. But I think like for your types of games, which are more traditional narrative games, do you have
Well, we do view ourselves as narrative first, a narrative first studio. But that doesn't mean that there's no back and forth between various departments. In fact, we are the way we work is extremely collaborative. I do have to say that the game mechanics need to be locked into place sooner than the whole story. But there is this whole big ideation phase where, as you just described, there are days where narrative is sort of driving the conversation, and then there are days where programming or audio design or the art department is sort of at the wheel, and things change constantly. And sometimes the art department comes to us and says we should change that, come up with a different way of either, I don't know, solving this particular story problem, or the way you chose to present it. And other days we go to, I don't know, the programmers and say, this needs to happen, just figure it out, in a more polite way. But yeah, extremely collaborative. So in that sense, I mean, you described how in film industry, it's just like crazy expensive to work this way. But when I draw parallels from my life in theater, it's very common in theater to sometimes not use original material written by William Shakespeare, but just come together as a group, and not just the actors, but also the light technicians, the audio design people, the set designers, everyone. They all come together for, I don't know, 2 months, and they all come up with the story and the production together. And that's very similar to the way we work at Zaum, even though we are narrative first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's much up to what I call the creative leader in It Takes Two. It's Josef Fares, the game director. I mean, their vision. And this game was much about that, his vision of marrying both. But then, of course, it's a question, okay, how do you get there? But as much as possible within the limits of the budget and time and all that, we try to never lose that. But we both wanted, I mean, even more of the story and the character than it ended up with. But I mean, he will never let go of that, Josef Fares. Again, that was the reason he felt he really needed a professional screenwriter on board. And it's a matter of taste. I mean, some gamers, they don't want that. So
yeah, I think it's very healthy. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about theme, but I think like as the script to the side, like knowing what you want to communicate to the world, and have maybe the characters in place, and the world, the story world in place, and then maybe I think you can wait with the actual the dialogue or something. That would be more like content in the way that we think of content in assets in the game industry, right? Like, oh, I need to write the dialogue for this particular level. It would be like a piece of content, like creating a almost like a 3D object or something. But you need to know quite early on where you're heading.